at the leadership lessons that we can learn from the late Daniel Arap Moi, who was the second president of Kenya. And we know the death of retired President Daniel Arap Moi marks the end of a generation of Africa's pioneering leaders who shaped the history of the nations before and after independence. Mr. Moi was part of the leaders who served in the Colonial Legislative Council, participated in the negotiations for independence during the Lancaster conferences, served in the inaugural cabinet and rose to become president, sidestepping some of the most mercurial and charismatic politicians of his time. He leaves behind a rich history of credible achievements, having risen from a humble background of a classroom teacher. Mr. Moi did far more than many of his generation. Assertive, energetic, and decisive, he ran a tight ship. He had his fingers on the country's pulse through an elaborate security and provincial administration system that reported directly to him. Throughout his presidency, he was guided by simplistic philosophy of Nyaoism, following in the footsteps and explained in terms of peace, love, and unity. His proposition was that he was following in the footsteps of the first president, Jomo Kenyatta. But that was debatable. Mr. Moi was a bundle of paradox. He exhibited genuine humility and affection for the ordinary citizens, dramatically demonstrated by his generosity of cash and gifts. He mixed with the hoi polloi and spoke the language they understood. He thrived through populist roadside proclamation. Most of his closest political allies were simple-minded individuals strategically drawn from various ethnic blocs who formed a viable cog in his administration. But President Moi had a dark side. Cunning, conniving, manipulating, and authoritarian. He created a police state that brooked no nonsense. Critics were ruthlessly crushed. Human rights abuse were prevalent. Political detention, extrajudicial killings, among other excesses, were perpetrated under his regime. Most of the hedonistic acts may have been done behind his back, but they happened under his watch nonetheless. Perhaps it can be argued that Mr. Moi was a victim of socio-economic and political environment of the time. The fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989 and the subsequent collapse of the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republic, USSR, created a new world order. Socio-economic and political divide of the West and East, capitalism and communism ended, and in came a unipolar world led by the United States. Liberal democracy, economic deregulation, expansion of civil liberties, and globalization created a totally new environment. With the benefit of hindsight, some of this were beyond the comprehension of an elderly statesman schooled in the tradition of blind obeisance to authority. So this morning we elect to slice and dice his style of leadership. Do we celebrate him as a hero? Many will say, yes, he did wonderful acts during his regime, as it were. We're here with our panelists, and they're ready to go, of course, to talk to us on the style, the substance of Moi's leadership. And here is their profiles. There you and of course they're starting on the ready to give us their presentation on what they think about the leadership of President Moi. I just want to run them by the rules that we have this morning. Just, you know, rules of engagement. We have yellow card, red card, and also the bell as well. So this is just in the interest of keeping time, right? We have around 6 minutes, each of us. So midway, 3 minutes, I'm going to raise the yellow. So don't get spooked and walk away from the lectern. So when you see the red, you should be winding up. And of course, if you don't come out from the lectern, I'm going to toll the bell. So if you refuse to come out still, we're going to, all of us, to yank you from the lectern and get you back to your seat. But thank you so much. Also get to drive the show with us. Hit us on Twitter. AM Live NTV is a Twitter handle. AM Live NTV, our profile name on Facebook, and 20686, our SMS portal. So first up on the lectern this morning is Irungi Houghton, who is the Executive Director of Amnesty International Kenya. And sir, you got 6 minutes, beginning now.
Good morning, Dewal, and good morning, fellow panelists. First of all, let me start. I think there are 4 leadership lessons that I have drawn from this, iconic chapter that comes to a close. But first, I just wanted to offer my condolences to the family, to the nation as a whole. In many ways, we are seeing an important part of Kenyan history come to a close. And I wish them the strength to grieve and also to celebrate everything that he has brought. Having said that, I think there are 4 major lessons that we can draw from the late former President Daniel Arap Moi. The first is that it is not the management of power when one is in office that really matters, or the quality of that management. It is in how you manage your transition, how you manage your exit from the stage. And I think Mugabe, after 37 years, got that wrong. And we saw what happened in his case. But in this case, we have a leader who essentially ran this government and this country for 24 years. He then was able to step down for 18 years and enjoy his retirement, offer his forgiveness, seek new relationships with people in the political class, but also really to exit the political stage for 18 years. The second lesson really is that smart people make dumb mistakes. There is many epitaphs, or many things that are said about President Moi, and one of them is the professor of politics. And in that sense, he was extremely gifted in terms of how he managed political dynamics, how he exercised public office in order to maintain a command and control over this country. There is a lesson that comes from the relationship between blind people and their guide dogs. The blind person must trust that the dog has the intuition to obey the blind person, but at the same time, he must also trust that the dog has the instinct to protect them both. And I think the other lesson from this period really is that when you appoint a series of yes men and yes women around you, you will inevitably court a disaster in terms of leadership. You need critical comments. The third lesson is really that you cannot separate the man and the context. In many ways, the former president, the late former president, lived above the Constitution. He was probably the last of the imperial presidents. In many ways, the state was incapable of protecting its own public resources. We saw a lot of corruption and mismanagement during that period. We also saw the judiciary cannibalized at the interest of the executive. Dissent in this period was really dangerous. I mean, I remember this as a young student. I finished my first degree in the University of London. I wanted to study at, at Kenyatta University. And I was told when I went to approach the lecturers there that, first of all, that the lecturer I wanted to work under, that was Maina Kinyati, that he was in detention and that he would not be able to supervise my master's dissertation. But secondly, that the intelligence service, then the dreaded special branch, would have to mark my papers first before the lecturers could give me a grade, because there was a great danger that they would give me an A grade, which is what I expected, and then they would be picked up and detained for several months. So this was the culture in which we really grew up in, and I'm now in my 50s, so I remember that culture vividly as a young man. Many people did not survive that period. As I said, dissent was dangerous. People like Titus Undugusi, the young Karim Ndudu, and I could name many others, really had their lives ripped from them, or their livelihoods and their businesses. And that is also part of the legacy of Moi. And I want to separate that from the very human character that is now beginning to come out of the newspapers in terms of the man, the man himself. But man in the context of leadership is inseparable. You cannot escape the context that you either created or that you managed. The last one is this one. Is no political leader, however powerful, however much control that they exercise over the military, over the economy, over the political class, can escape their demise if they lose political legitimacy. And I think this is the one thing that we can remember the former late president well, because he knew when it was time to quit. He knew when it was time to let go of Section 2A. He knew when it was time to hand over power. And like I said, unlike Mugabe, who had to be pushed from power, in many ways the late president saw the opportunity of leaving and took that opportunity well. And he got to live in a country that is much more open, much more democratic, and he got to see the benefits of really a very powerful constitution that enables the rights to all. Much has been said this week about the milk program. I want to put it into context. The first is that there was no universal primary education at primary level in the 1980s and the 1990s. 2.2 million children who were locked out of school only walked into school at the advent of the NARC government introducing universal primary education. So it is important to recognize, yes, there was a milk program, but there actually wasn't the kind of support and services that we now see in this government with the universal healthcare, the healthcare coverage, the universal secondary education, the 100% transition. And for many reasons, I think we need to put that into a bit of context. But having said that, I want to end on a good note, which is to say that, in many ways, I agree with the 3 days of state in waiting. And I, again, offer my condolences to the family and to the nation. I'd also like to say that I made a New Year's resolution this year, and which was that I would not appear in manuals on television. And we've discussed this a couple of times. I think one of my contributions to this conversation would be to thank Debal for the opportunity of being here this morning and to give my testimony, and to offer my panelists my apologies, but I will have to leave, and look forward to watching this also on the television as a viewer. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Rungi Houghton. We have been talking some of the salient points that he's raised. But before you go, Irungo also have sent you a text. Maybe it would be nice for you to look at that text before you leave. So it's always wise just to consult before you do so. Up next, we have with us Eldon, Mike Eldon, who is the founder and CEO of the depot, that is the Dunn Eldon Place of Tomorrow. So, Mike, you got 6 minutes as well.
Thank you, Debal, and good morning, everyone. Good morning, viewers, and like Houghton, condolences to the family, and congratulations to all those who came forward to reveal to us what we didn't seem familiar with for many years whilst President Moi was in power, or even as he was or after he retired. This week, unusually, Debal rang me not yesterday but the day before, so I had time, particularly for this topic today, to seek the views of all sorts of people, from elders to Uber drivers, on this question. And I cautioned them that this wasn't a performance appraisal of President Moi. It was lessons and assuming the positives at this time of respect to the recently departed. And everyone did come up with positives. And I think that, by and large, is our theme today, the lessons learned, not negative lessons. That's too easy. Because it's easy, as with any political leader from any time in any country, to criticize them. If you take, for instance, Tony Blair, David Cameron, Theresa May, as they departed from high office, they were hammered, no one, it seems, said anything good about them at all. And I'm just making this point that in a free society, the other end of the spectrum from North Korea or wherever, one deifies leaders as they're in power and after. People somehow don't focus on the positive. For Tony Blair, it was only Iraq. For the other two, only Brexit. And the other question is, what do we really know? What do we not know that we don't know? What is it that are among either the great achievements or the great setbacks that were not because of the leader, maybe despite them? Maybe they didn't even know one of these events had happened that set them forward or backward until after it had. In a relatively free society like ours, with media coverage and some opposition even in the worst of the Moi days, it's inevitable that the media will focus on the negative in order to move things to the next higher level. And as I was thinking about this, my mind turned to that saying from Julius Caesar and Shakespeare, that the evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred within their bones. We don't want that to happen in an unbalanced way here. And the other saying that I immediately thought of is one I like so much in so many contexts, from Theodore Roosevelt, about how easy it is to be a critic. And it's the man in the arena, as Moi was for those 24 years. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. We critics. So, as Mois said to his successors after he left State House, you now see how easy it is for you to be the great leader that so many people said I wasn't. And again, as we've been seeing in the last few days, the man that we saw in public, that stern gentleman who instilled fear in all, in private was quite different. I only met him once at State House. We were donating a computer, and I found him such a cheerful person, such a great listener. And so I'm sure others will, as Irungu briefly mentioned it, as you did, Dabal, the list of his achievements in education, in health, regional peace, and so forth. But again, like Houghton, let me reinforce these two great practical realities of positive. Giving in to multi-party democracy with all the problems it's introduced, as he predicted, and the stepping down from power gracefully. And then, before he did Jamhuri Day, 12th of December, he said, and I watched the video clip last night, anyone who abused me, I forgive them. For anyone I have offended or hurt, please forgive me, as we now forgive him for the less positive aspects of his time as president and appreciate objectively areas where he did well for this country.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. Mike Eldon, the chairman and the founder of the Dunn Eldon Place of Tomorrow. We've taken selling points from him. We want to hear now from Professor Labanairu, who is the Vice Chancellor of Daystar University. Laban, just to remind you, I think maybe you're tethered so that, or it's okay, you can walk over to, yeah, you can just remove that mic so that your mic from the, kindly just help him? That's okay. Right.
Thank you very much. for being invited to this conversation. And my deepest felt condolences go to the family of the departed president and, of course, our motherland, Kenya. I am in a rather unique position because I had the privilege to work for the retired president as a principal of one of his schools, and that is Sunshine School on Langata Road. A singular privilege being chosen from a school in Western to come and start Sunshine. And just that aspect of it tells you the kind of person our departed president was. He chose the best in Kenya, irrespective of tribe. And I want us to go through his cabinet during his tenure, and the cabinet was truly the face of Kenya, and even in the positioning of Kenyans in various positions. For that, I thank him immensely, because that was a turning point in my life. What can I say about President Moi? It's almost impossible for me to bring out negatives about him, because I had the privilege to work closely to him for more than 8 years. And the first aspect about the departed president is that he had a charming humor. Charming humor. He wasn't gifted in elaborate communication, but he would throw words that would just send people laughing. And not what I witnessed today in this republic, where you have so much sarcastic wit on podiums in this country. And so Moi just fascinated many people with his humor and delighted many of us as we sought to get meaning of what he meant to say. That was his biggest trick. President Moi was authentic. And I think authenticity is something we are crying for in the Republic today. What do I mean? President Moi had a very soft heart. And the negatives surrounding him could have been perpetuated by those who were supporting the regime, but he had a very soft heart. He had a strong mind, a very strong mind. And we all agree he had serving hands. Serving hands. Look at the education sector, from one public university to 7, and name the schools in this country. Serving hands also made him go for detail. He went for detail. I remember as the principal of Sunshine, I would make the Form 1 selection, and I would have to take the list to State House. And he would use his green pen to mark the students by name. President Moi indeed believed in symbolism. I don't know how many of us know why he carried that fimbo ya nyayo. It is from Psalms 23. Your rod and your staff will comfort me. The rod was for discipline, for direction, for authority. The staff, which was his philosophy of peace, love, and unity, was for Kenyans to feel comforted and loved. Finally, I cannot fail to mention Moi's sense of humility. Unbelievable humility. And I witnessed it everywhere. I went with him in this country and outside this country, that he was not fascinated by power. And so I think as Kenyans, let us build on his legacy, and let us pull out the positive attributes that he has left behind. And let us know that all of us are human beings, so where he erred, it is also a lesson to us. May his soul rest in peace.
Thank you. Professor Labanayero. Of course, he's raised also some salient points that we've taken note of, and we shall be discussing them also in the course of the program. We have Professor Joseph Delgado, who is the Vice Chancellor of St. Paul's University, who is also walking over to the lectern right now. And we want to hear also from his side, what did he really learn from President Moi in his manner of leadership as well. So you've got 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Debal. Good morning, viewers. Good morning, panelists. Let me express my deepest gratitude to be included among these very eminent panelists and to discuss this very important topic of leadership lessons from President Moi. But also let me add my own voice, sincerely from my heart, to send condolences to the family, to the nation, and indeed in entire region and our continent. My prayers very sincerely are with the family at this time of mourning. I want to draw out 4 lessons also, just mention 4. But before that, let me begin by mentioning that way back in 1978, just as a little boy in primary school, when the founding president of the Republic, Mzee Kenyatta, passed on. As a little boy, I was filled with anxiety and fear of the uncertainty of what would happen in Kenya. At that time, as a little boy, in my mind, I had no doubt that the country, that was my mind, the country was the president, and the president is the country. That Kenyatta is Kenya, and Kenya is Kenyatta, and without Kenyatta, probably Kenya would not hold together, and we would not actually enjoy the peace and stability that was there. And I thought that was the end of my education, and that's probably the end of the Kenya I knew. But comes in President Moi, the second president of the Republic, and brought in some stability. In fact, shortly thereafter, I was among the first peoples in primary school who benefited from the free primary milk. And I thought, wow, this is not only good, but better than what I knew. It brought that sense of there is a caring leader and able and capable in place. And one of the things that I now, looking back, realize and see with Moi is, as a leader, one, there was presence. You know, he was like almost everywhere. He touched every part of this country. He touched every life. He connected with people across social divides and across ages, with elders, with women and men, and even children. That presence, that connection as a leader makes or leaves a lasting impact that people will talk of you even long after you are gone, let alone negative or positive and all that. That presence itself is a key leadership mark for me when I remember President Moi. Secondly, Moi, His Excellency Moi, was a unifier. I can tell you, when I went to school, we were more cohesive society as Kenya than we are now. And he unified people, rallying us as one nation, as one people, into one united nation. And that needed a bit of strictness and hands-on, but he did unify Kenya. Third, he was an organizer. The ability to organize and rally followers around common goals and focus. For example, Nyayoism, or the Nyayo philosophy of peace, love, and unity. People will find it difficult to follow leaders when they are not sure where the leader is leading them. And with Moi, there was no doubt that he was fully in charge and knew where he wanted to take the nation. Fourthly, mentor. President Moi was a great mentor. Many in leadership today in Kenya owe it to President Moi being where they are today in terms of leaders of this nation. In fact, it is said that the function of a leader is to produce more leaders, not more followers. And if your actions inspire others to dream more, learn more, do more, and become more, you are a great leader, as one John Quincy Adams says. And President Moi gave us this and many, many more. May his soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. He was a stabilizing figure, a unifier, organizer, and mentor. And we shall be looking at that also later. Right now, I can see Simon Bevy walking on to the lectern as well. He's the founder and CEO of Transform Kenya, and he's going to tell us more about this man. What did he learn from him, maybe from his formative years as well, up to now? Someone to get.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. We definitely grieve together with the nation, and we pray for the family and for the nation during this time of reflection, that all of us will take some lessons out of Mzee Moi. I just remember when I was a little boy, and the big man, President Moi, was coming to the village. And it's like we couldn't sleep for about a week. We were talking about it. Moi just was like power itself. And he was coming to the village. We were looking forward. We knew that he was going to leave some goodies. He's going to connect with us. Some of us who were very short climbed on trees to make sure we have a good glance of the president. The president was quite something. But just quick lessons. Some of them have been mentioned, so I'll just slide through them. Number one is to say that I think for me, I take it that leadership is a trust. That God gives us power through leadership, and we can use it to build or to break. And there are some things, great things, that the president used power to build. And of course, there are others who mourn and criticize because of some of the missteps of the former president. So that we learn leadership is a trust. We either use it well or use it badly. I think it reminds me of a quote from the first George Bush of the years. He said in his inauguration that the best use of power is to use it to bless others. The best use of power. So learning that's yasambaya, mashambaya. If we use our power well, we will build people. If we don't, it's going to hurt some. And then I remember Moi as a visionary. He used to say, mimi ni kama giraffe, naona mbali. He had a dream to become the president from a teacher. So self-dream, that all dreams are valid, that you could come from anywhere to anywhere. If you dream it and work towards it. But also remember the dreams he had as a president, especially those earlier days. Nyayo T-zones, Nyayo bars, Nyayo, the schools that he started. I'll never forget Momonyoko wa Udongo. I think I learned that word as I saw Moi, in our part of the country, lifting rocks and building, gabions so that there'll be no soil erosion. The trees we planted when we were young. Vision is what leaders deal in. And you have clear visions, you're going to move people from point A to B. I think thirdly, and has been mentioned, is his ability to connect with people. Leaders connect with the people, and they should do that well. And Moi connected with people, whether from his speech, in the way he spoke, very simply in a language that everyone would connect with, on the roads, everywhere. He listened well. Many people who knew him very closely told me that Moi would rarely forget your name. He would call you out of the crowd and tell you who you are. Just that ability to connect with people makes people feel like, this man cares for me. And when you feel cared for, I think someone has said that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think Moi had a way of caring for those that he was close with. Number 4 is having a leadership philosophy. There is a leader, you need to know where you're going, and that has been mentioned and well put. Peace, love, and unity. A lot of things Moi spoke repeatedly. We still remember those things. Leaders owe it to themselves to have a clear leadership philosophy that they follow. Number 5 would be act, don't react. A lot of people have said that Moi turned a corner after the 82 plot, coup plot. And we saw a side of him that we had not seen before. I think for me, it tells me that as a leader, each one of us has his demons. And then, and our calling as leaders is to manage our dark side, to manage our demons. And for me as a Christian is then to look up to God to help me deal with the bad side of me, because everyone has some. And if you don't deal with that, then it's going to come out in a way that will hurt people. And number 6 is about freedom for the people. I think in some ways, the former president, waited long. People began to agitate for multi-partyism. People were hurt. The police got to hurt a lot of people. But it reminds me of what the Bible says, let my people go. I think a leader is there to free the people, empower them, allow them. And eventually he did. He read the situation and allowed multi-partyism and other things to happen. So when you free people, then they rise up. When you press them down, then they kick back. And number 7 would be the courage to display your faith. I loved the way the president went to church every Sunday, and he spoke about his faith, and he was never ashamed about it. I remember him preaching to his dream team and talking to Dr. Licky and telling him, I hope siku moja nitakupata mbinguni. And he would freely talk about his faith, that everyone is driven by his deep convictions, and it's okay to have your faith and be proud of it and use what you believe to bless others. And lastly for me is success without successes is a failure. And initially, the president, and I think all of us do that, many times we believe our own press, and we believe there's no one to take over from us. Initially would say, mimi nikiangalia hapa, sioni mtu ambaye atainuka kuendeleza mambo yangu. But eventually, I think he rose up to the fact that we all serve for a time, and we need to raise up others. And there are many today who learned from his feet, either from near him or far from him, who are now doing what they're doing because of what they learned from Mzee. And so I think as I close, for me is to say, President Moi reminds me of what legacy is. That one day the curtain is going to fall for each and every one of us. And eventually, I talk about the 3 C's of legacy, that we need a cause that we live for, a mission in life. And number 2, we need a community that we touch. There are many people today on mourning because the president touched them in one way or another. And lastly, we need continuity. We need to do something that outlives us, that blesses the next generation. A cause to live for, community to touch, and continuity after we are gone. I again salute the former president and pray that we learn great lessons from him.
Right, thank you. Simon Baby there, and those salient points is raise leadership is a trust. You need to be a visionary leader. You need to connect with people. And of course, also the hallmarks of legacy, cause, community, and continuity.